Sorry, it looks like my mic was off. So sorry about the delay in starting this live TV. We're just getting used to the technologies, etc., etc. So welcome anyway. We won't wait too long to get going. I just wanted to do some quick introductions. I am Parvez from Veda Consulting. We are a CiviCRM consultancy who primarily do CiviCRM work, and we've been involved in CiviCRM since 2011. I've been involved in CiviCRM before that as well, so we've been in the community a long time. The idea of these sessions is that we're gonna try and cover aspects of questions, functions, strategic decisions around CiviCRM, how you from anything from how do I do X right up to what's the is CiviCRM the right fit for my organization, for instance. So we'll try and cover as many different areas as people want to hear about. So just give me 1 second. I've been told the mic is a bit low. Let's get it a bit closer. Okay, so that is now maxed out. Hopefully that's better. So today we're going to talk about choosing between WordPress and Drupal for your CiviCRM installation. I've got some slides and stuff that we'll go through, and we'll try and explore the subject a bit. So let me just get the slides ready. There you go. Okie dokie. So as I said, we're Veda Consulting, and today we're going to talk about Drupal v WordPress. Now we're going to talk about it from the perspective primarily of CiviCRM. What's the best fit if you've got CiviCRM? We're not necessarily talking about what's the best CMS between the two. So let's get into that. So a bit about us. So why did I feel like this is a topic we could talk about? Well, we don't do CMSs. We don't really partake in site builds. We don't market ourselves as people that build sites. So therefore, we're not really wedded to either WordPress or Drupal. And we're not tied into any particular one of those two. So we can hopefully offer you a really unbiased view on how we help our clients get through that decision-making process, what their feedback is around their CMS choices, and how they got on once they've made those decisions. I just wanted to introduce you to my dog. You might see him walking around in the background. He's feeling a bit grumpy today. And finally, in this session, we'll be talking about the decision-making process. We're not going to get into feature comparisons, because if you're at the point where you're asking the question, what's best and what should I do? In my mind, there's a lot of background information that you probably haven't quite got to the bottom of that's going to help you with your decision. So really, this is about how do you get from the point of deciding you're going to go CiviCRM, and you want to go with a CMS, and you're trying to get to a point of which CMS should you pick. This is the point where we're trying to make those functional decisions based on the business needs. So like I said, the first question is, why are you asking this question? Are you asking because you're not sure about the technical features and you're trying to see what's best? If you are, then it shouldn't be that way. Like, there's a lot more to the decision than just the technical toolset that you get with either of those CMSs. One of the reasons you might be asking is because you think you need your CRM connected to your CMS. You should first explore whether that really is necessary. So do you need to expose CRM pages directly onto the CMS? If you don't, then you could do that just using APIs. There's lots of ways to do it. It might be that you're already on a proprietary CMS system and you don't necessarily want to move. That's still possible. You can deploy CiviCRM with either of those CMSs without it being exposed on the front end. So there's questions around there. And if your goal should be, obviously your users and your organization is engaged in the CMS that you're using. So the kind of risk of getting this wrong is obviously that you end up with a CMS that you don't use. So what I'm trying to get to there is, it's not about what's the right fit for CiviCRM. The real question is, what's the right CMS for you as an organization? So in order to get to the single point of truth that a lot of organizations are striving to get to, you need to make sure that all areas of the business are engaged with all of the products that you put into place, and all of those products are feeding back to your central CRM system, so that you can do the single point of truth analysis that you probably want to be able to do. So there's some of the backgrounds as to these things will play a part in the answer to your question. So one of the first questions is, do you really need to pick one? So as I said before, if you're not at this point going to put your CRM and your CMS together, so i.e. you don't need to expose CRM functions directly onto the CMS side, onto your content management system, I should have said, sorry. Then the question becomes a lot easier. The answer to the question becomes a lot easier, and I'll come back to that later on what I would do in that scenario. But that's one of the first things that we normally ask our clients is, what is your functional requirement in terms of the CRM and exposing features? How far do you need it to go? And that will really help decide which CMS you would use. So one of the questions we get asked quite a lot is, well, if I go with WordPress right now, or I go with Drupal right now, can I change it to the other way around? The simple answer to that question is yes, you can. So you can take your CRM and move it from WordPress to Drupal, or from Drupal to WordPress. There are obviously some knock-on effects in terms of the CMS related features that you might have. But if you're primarily deploying so that you can just start using CiviCRM and understanding how it works and maybe onboarding the organization, then you could just do that with WordPress, and then at a later stage you could migrate that CRM to Drupal as and when you redid your website, or migrating it into your existing website. So I'm trying to, in this slide, I'm trying to take the pressure off you. It's not like a one final decision, and if you get it wrong, you're kind of stuck with that for life. It's not that way. So you shouldn't put too much onus on it, getting it 100% right. As you probably know, there's no such thing as 100% correct solution anyway. This is just what we're trying to do in this session is marry the right CMS to most of your needs. This is one of my favorites. So obviously when you start asking the question about which CMS should I use, every person that you speak to has an opinion, and sometimes they're very strong opinions. So you might have decided, I'm going to use Drupal, for instance, and then someone will show you a stat from the internet about how widely used WordPress is, and you're suddenly back to square one again. So it is difficult. I thought what would be interesting during this session is maybe if we did a search and let's see what comes back. I haven't done this, so these sessions are very unprepared, let's put it that way. I've put the slides together, but I haven't really done much else. So let's have a look at what's out there on the internet. So this is the Civi page around choosing the CMS, and obviously they list out a few. So Backdrop, Drupal 7, Drupal 8. At the moment, I'm classing them all the same. All the Drupal flavors I'm putting into one pot, and then WordPress I'm putting into the other pot, and I'll come on to why I'm doing that a bit later. So the CiviCRM page around this, there's a lot of resource and help and organizations and effects for CMS. So in effect, they're kind of saying we're not going to tell you on this page. That's how that reads to me. And there's continues to be continues to be significant changes. Okay, great. Generally appropriate for factors, for example, the website may be already built. Yep, we've kind of talked about that. This page discusses some factors. So how much information of CiviCRM do we want to display on our website? I'm not sure I would have phrased it that way. I wouldn't have said how much, I would have said how often and which information, because quantity is not really the thing here. It's about breadth of data and breadth of integration. The second point tries to come onto that. So it's what information collected for our website do we want to store in CiviCRM. So for instance, if someone submits a form online, a lot of charities or not-for-profit organizations who haven't yet digitally transformed will often end up in a situation where that information is then keyed into a CRM somewhere. So the form submission comes through to someone's email box. They then key it in somewhere, or they don't. And you end up with these kind of breaks in process. So that question is kind of asking about automation, like how much automation do you want in your system? So at what points do you need information to flow into your CRM, and what points do you want it coming out of your CRM? That's really what you're talking about there. The second point will decide whether the CMS and the CRM need to be together a lot more than the first. So if you have form submission that needs to come through, i.e. you've got a lot of event registrations, submission forms, contributions, donations, etc., then you're probably looking at putting your CRM and your CMS together. There are some extensions out in the community that help you separate, but again, my assumption I'm making here is you're quite new to the environment, and you probably want something that for now is just integrated, and you may choose to break it out later. If you're going to break it out at this point, you're probably just going to keep your CRM and your CMS separate, your main content website. Okay, so availability of extensions. So one of the changes in CiviCRM over the years has been that extensions, i.e. extending CiviCRM, adding more features, have become CMS agnostic. They have become less and less reliant on the CMS that you're using. Historically, they were all, they tended to be built around Drupal. The introduction of WordPress kind of changed that philosophy a little bit. So now extensions tend to be platform CMS agnostic. So that shouldn't be one of the key drivers for a decision. I think that's what that paragraph is trying to say. Integration features and WordPress has become an embedded content. Yeah, so shortcodes. That might not make sense to you if you're kind of reading that. What does that mean? The way I differentiate between the integration features, the way this is kind of worded, what you're talking about is technical barriers, right? So to WordPress as a general is a much easier, less technically. It has much lower technical barrier than Drupal does in terms of usage, in terms of installation, etc., etc. So, what it does give you is the ability to embed Civi forms into WordPress pages or posts, and it's a very easy way to do it. There's a very clean interface. So I'll show you a bit of that later. I'm not sure I'd call that an integration feature. That's just how you go about embedding a form. Backdrop and Drupal 8 and 7, again, even in this page, they're kind of grouping them all together. Common embedded blocks, yeah, I'm not sure. Several blocks, yeah, but the majority of Drupal sites, in my experience, will be using web form probably to do that. What are we doing here? I don't know what's next. CMS roles and permissions, yeah, that is one of the differences, but there are WordPress plugins that let you expand the roles out in WordPress so that you can have different roles and different permissions based on those roles. And Civi itself has got better at removing some of that from the CMS layer. Okay, so not anything substantial there, I don't think. Installation process. I wouldn't put that in why you might choose between one or the other. That's like, I'm going to assume you've got it installed. Testing. Which is how you manage both for now and the future. That doesn't make much sense to me. I'm going to skip over that. Drupal most flexible, backdrop, Joomla, by one, 4 options because it'll be very easy to build in WordPress. I'm going to frame this differently. I think I know what it's saying, but I'm going to frame that a little bit differently. So that's the CiviCRM page. Now, you've probably read that and gone, I still don't know what to pick. To be honest, I've read it and probably come out a little bit more confused than I was before. So let's do a wider search. So let's see what's out there. So I've been to a few of these links before, but I'm just let's open them up. Let's see what they say. I don't know. I haven't read any of them. We'll find out in a minute. Drupal, WordPress versus Drupal 8 comparison. Okay, so easier to upgrade and completely changing the CMS. Provides a more robust editing experience in Drupal 7. Yeah, I mean the Drupal 8 editors, even the Drupal 7 Gutenberg editor they're miles better than they used to be. But it's still not the same. That's not the issue, and shouldn't really be a driver for picking a CMS because the editor's a bit better. We rely on views. I'll talk about views a bit later. Immediate cost to migrate appear to be relatively low. From where to where? Oh, this is internal. Oh, okay, I'm understanding. Right. So this page is about CiviCRM moving from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. I think. We will need Drupal. Yeah. So this is their internal decision making process. So again, this is interesting to read. Drupal 10 will probably be another big upgrade. These are the kind of things where Drupal's technical barriers are quite high, right? So they're already talking about Drupal 9, Drupal 10, potential upgrade paths. That's scary for a lot of organizations, right? WordPress doesn't have any of that kind of stuff. There is no worry. The upgrade paths are very simple. They're frequent. They do not have the technical barrier or debt that Drupal carries with it. So CiviCRM's decision making, reading from this, there's nothing about we don't have Drupal's resource and we can't access Drupal resource. So their decision making sounds like it's gone along the lines of, well, WordPress will be a change because we don't have WordPress developers and therefore it's high risk. There's an interesting line in there about security. I'll come back to that. We've got our own stories about the security in WordPress. What did I say is a lower ongoing cost? Yeah, I would agree with that. And again, I'll come back to that. Easier use, exactly. So we talked about Gutenberg being good there, and they're saying already WordPress is like that. So that's interesting how they kind of spoke about it. Let's close that down. Choosing, so we've already been through that page. So we know again. So when was this? This was a long time ago, it looks like 2013. Noob. Lobo, the infamous Donald Lobo, one of the founders of CiviCRM. Depends on which thing fits out of the box. Yeah, I think this is a little bit out of date. I'm going to ignore this as 2013. It's not really about customizations anymore. WordPress, useless. Let's not worry about that. So absolutely nothing in those first few. Let's try that one. Again, 2014, that is not going to be accurate. It's 8 years old. Not 8 years, 6 years old. It's not going to be accurate anymore. I'm going to do one more, and then I'm going to admit defeat that I'm not getting anything of value out of this. This isn't talking about CiviCRM at all, so it's probably not going to help. So I'm probably doing what you guys have done. I've done a search. I'm none the wiser. So let's forget that search. Let's go. I've not got anywhere with Civi and Drupal, so let's just try Drupal and WordPress. And I've deliberately ignored Joomla at this stage. I'm probably going to upset a few Joomla people, but I'm going on market share and popularity. What we hear from our customers at the moment, Joomla doesn't really come into the picture, and it's not because we're not talking about it. We don't promote either of the CMSs, any of them. So that's what's coming back from them, from their market research and from their going out to tenders, etc. That is what's coming back. They're being proposed, WordPress or Drupal. So that's why I'm kind of sticking to those. So that's the most common question. So what's this saying? Most popular amongst the three. I've got a slide about that, so we'll show you that a bit later. What else? Another benefit is immense amounts of support. So this is important. One of the key differences between Drupal and WordPress is the ecosystem. Drupal's ecosystem is a free-to-use ecosystem, i.e. all of the modules, as they call them, are free to use, so I can go ahead, grab one, install it, start using it. Whereas the Drupal community and framework is built around plugins and paid support. So there are free plugins, but a lot of them have a subscribe for pro features, for instance, or a way to get access to paid access to the developers that are responsible for maintaining them. So what that means is, in effect, you've got access to a lot more support than you would do in Drupal. The Drupal modules, the maintainers have no financial interest necessarily in being available because there is no infrastructure in place to pay a developer or to engage a developer directly from the Drupal ecosystem. This may have changed in the last few months. I'm not saying I'm the oracle of all this, but it's just my experience. So that is an important point. It's widely used. Bluehost offers, so yeah, that's fine. WordPress and my product. Yeah, there's one deal-breaking downside. I don't think that's accurate anymore. I think that's how WordPress came to be, but I'm not sure I agree it's designed to be a blogging platform. And even if you took that at its face value, there are enough plugins in the ecosystem to show you that it can do a lot more than just a blogging platform. And it's all important to understand all CMSs, all products start off to deliver a specific need, and then they often evolve and do a lot more. So the initial need for WordPress was blogging, but that doesn't mean that's what it's designed to do. It's moved on. The interface remarks largely focused on small websites. Well, yeah, again, I'm not sure I agree with that. I think I read somewhere that the White House has moved to WordPress now, so that's not a small website. And they used to be one of the flagships of Drupal, if that is accurate. So that does show that's not quite accurate. If you're going to or a small website, yeah, I'm not sure. I'm going to ignore the Drupal one. Drupal is similar to Joomla, but it's designed for complete freedom when it comes to content management. Web design lets you fully customize. So this is important. One of our developers, Che, was talking about Drupal the other day, and he used the word Lego. And I think that's probably the best description that I could give to Drupal. Drupal is like Lego. So yes, it's incredibly flexible, but you do have to build it, right? So you have to decide which pieces you're going to stick together, how you're going to build it, and what it's going to look like. And what that can mean is that you are in the hands of whoever is building your Drupal site, because you're reliant on them to be fully versed in how to do things. And if they don't quite get it right, then you could end up with a quite shaky bit of Lego. So it's worth bearing in mind. It's not a pro or a con. It is the difference between the two. So WordPress has plugins. It's not quite Lego. It's add to your WordPress. Whereas Drupal is like just a box of Lego. Build it how you want to build it. Yes, it does content management, but it does a whole load of other stuff as well. The whole argument about Drupal being corporate and WordPress I'm not following that. I don't really agree with that, to be honest. I think they're both fit for purpose, but you have to decide what your functional needs are before you pick. It's a bit like me saying, well, I'm going to choose between a Shelby Mustang and a BMW Mini. They're both cars, right? We can't say one is designed for people and one isn't. They're both cars. They both do the same thing. But what is it I need my car for? And here, your answer should be the same thing. Not that it's not made for enterprise. WordPress is made to scale. It's made for enterprise. That's not the issue. A bit interesting, but not too much in there. Let's keep going. What else we got in now? CMS comparison. Which is better? I love that question. Which is better? It's another one. We do all those which is better ones. So that we've done. Let's close that down. Costs. Whee! Something that makes a bit more sense. Right, I haven't read this, but this is much more along the lines of what we're going to talk about. So I'll skip this. This is about hosting. So I'm not going to worry about the cost of hosting, because I'm expecting if you're going to put Civi on it, then your hosting costs will be very different to what they would be if you were just doing a small WordPress site or a small Drupal site. And these numbers are all based around small, $3 a month. I mean, that's not enterprise hosting or even organizational hosting. Level of expertise, good question, and exactly the sort of thing you should be thinking about. Again, I'll come into this in my presentation. The popularity, yes and no. Why have they got 2 bars? Is used by more than 40%. Oh, okay, so that's the entire web. 1 in every 3 websites. I'm guessing that is percentage share of the CMS. So again, I've got stats on this. I can explain them. The White House. So yeah, according to this as well, they're using it. University of Washington, PlayStation blog. So, the previous article talked about not being enterprise. I mean, these are pretty big websites. NASA is Drupal. I think that's a perfect example of where a technical organization is using a very technical CMS, right? It's kind of proof of the same thing. Choice of designs, design quality factor. I'm not sure about choice of design being, you can get the themes done in either of those pretty much however you want them done. So I wouldn't class that as a reason to decide between the two. Customization options. This is important, but it's more about how accessible those customization options need to be to you. And again, if we have time, we're a little bit behind, but if we have time, I'm going to show you what the difference between the two is. Security and updates. Infected websites. Of course, the distribution 2018, 90%. Wow, excellent. So that's 90% of WordPress websites are infected. Yeah, I mean, anytime I see a stat like that, there's always a story behind it. What stats are great at is showing you numbers, but what they don't show you is how that number is probably impacted by the ease of onboarding, i.e., I can go right now to a hosting company, anyone, GoDaddy, whoever, and probably in 5 minutes have a free WordPress site running. That site will be reporting back its statistics to WordPress.com or WordPress.org or somewhere to say this is the state of my site, and I'll probably never come back to that site again. And then at some point it's going to get hacked because it's not maintained anymore, and it will show up in these stats as a hacked site. But actually, it's not a live site, right? It's just something I put together to try out WordPress. So these bars are they're not very meaningful when things are very easy to do. What they demonstrate to me is how difficult CMSs are to onboard. So probably the reason that there are so few Drupal sites hacked is because it's much harder to fire one up, right? So fire one up that actually functions. So I can probably fire one up that doesn't do much, but firing one up that has some front end pages that actually deliver content, that I've tried a few plugins on, that I've done some stuff on, is probably much harder, and therefore there's far fewer of them flying around that are devs and test sites. So therefore my number's going to be lower. That's how I would put context around it. It doesn't mean WordPress is less secure. Drupal had a massive security hole about 3 years ago, 2017 I think it was, and if you didn't upgrade your Drupal site within 24 hours of them releasing that alert, then your website was probably 90%, 95% going to be hacked. So does that make Drupal any less secure than WordPress? No, it doesn't. Every all systems have security upgrades. It's just how you apply them. So these test sites are probably don't have updates turned on, have not had an update in decades, and therefore are compromised. But that doesn't. I wouldn't put anything behind this. Support and community, very important, and again I'll talk about that in my slides. This is a good doc. If anybody's looking, I would have a proper read of this. To wrap up, when to choose WordPress is great. If you want to do a DIY website, I'm not sure about that. It's the easiest platform if you're a beginner. Yeah, I mean, so what they're saying, easiest platform, is it's got the lowest technical barriers, right? Plus, if you want to expand your site, you can put thousands of plugins. Exactly, the ecosystem is entirely accessible. When to use Drupals, websites to build have a lot of custom functionality. I wouldn't say a lot of custom functionality. I'd say you need technical support. So you're going to need budget, really, is what this is getting at. Custom, anything the word custom starts getting expensive, right? It gets expensive to build, it gets expensive to maintain, it gets expensive to decommission when you don't need it anymore. So that word implies money. I would just read that as use Drupal if you've got money and you can justify the functional need to spend, right? This DIY, I'm not sure about that. I'm just going to ignore that statement. You also require a lot of custom work and coding. Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that's all changing in Drupal 8, and especially Backdrop. They addressed a lot of these kind of weaknesses. The UIs are much better. The usability is a lot better. The technical onboarding is still the barrier. When to use Joomla, I'm going to ignore that. That's pretty good. I'm just going to do one more and then we'll get on with our presentation. They're both open source. So yeah, neither WordPress nor Drupal have any kind of licensing costs. You've got support from strong community. Yeah, you have which community is accessible to you. That's what you probably want to think about. They're both easy to use. Yeah, I'd agree with that. It's with Drupal 8 and the newer changes. They've tried to bring it up to WordPress level. Yeah, I mean, in simple terms, they say you classify when you do timeout guides, etc. What's cheaper, right? WordPress is cheaper than Drupal. Yes, but why? We'll try and talk a bit about that learning curve. Yeah, good point. So this is really talking about my staff. Can I get up and running with Drupal, or is WordPress going to be easier? And again, I've got a slide on that, so we can talk about that. Extensibility, yeah, that's fine. Security, technically speaking, by words are made equally secure. However, it's not the core. Okay, so they're kind of saying there's a couple of howevers in there. I guess there's no decision. The main security issue of WordPress stems from that vulnerability that is created when a third-party plugins are. Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. You do need to be careful about the plugins you put in, and you do need to make sure that you've got updates going on. It comes down to this: what are you trying to achieve? Exactly. Yeah. So that's what I was saying. So again, another good article. I'm not going to do any more now because the wider Drupal v WordPress search seems to be resulting in a better bunch of reasons and thinking, right? So far so good. So the stats, we saw a couple of slides on stats there, right? So in terms of the CMS market share, WordPress has almost got 200 times the market share of Drupal, which is massive. If you looked at it that way, WordPress wins hands down, right? But we have to go back to the initial premise, which is WordPress is much easier to get up and running. So therefore, you can't really take that at much more than a stat. I think in terms of active sites, they're talking about the percentage share being a lot similar. But again, I don't know. I mean, I think it is definitely much more prominent than Drupal. But I don't know about 200 times the level. It might be accurate, it might not. But it's definitely got a bigger market share. The entire web. So the entire web means any website that is running a CMS or not. So again, WordPress is massive there. So there's 2 billion sites. Out of 2 billion sites, WordPress is running 35% of them, which is huge, which is good. Now, when you look at CiviCRM, it seems to be against the trend there. So we're saying there are almost 11,000 active installs, and out of them, 7,000 are Drupal, and about 3,000, I would say, for everything else. of which one is WordPress. Well, WordPress has 90% of that, something along those lines, 80% of that. So, that's saying effectively 2/3 of the sites are built in Drupal and 1/3 in the rest. So WordPress probably has around 20, 26, 28% in the CiviCRM sector, which is strange, right? I was expecting that number to be a bit more, but I think that demonstrates the CiviCRM community a little bit. It is a technical community, and again, I might get shot down for this, but I'm going to say it anyway. We are historically a very technical community. Everybody who uses and builds CiviCRM sites tends to be technically oriented. The technical barriers to get CiviCRM up and running are quite high because it stems from Drupal, right? So most of the decision making, the approaches were the same as when Drupal made its decisions. So I would expect the same technical barriers. So maybe this stat shows more about the Civi community than it does about which CMS you should use based on stats, right? So that would be my take on it. So, we're getting this far. We're probably getting even more fried out than we started. There's some easy decisions that you can make that can really help you, right? So if our client was saying, well, right now I don't really need too much integration, I'm happy to have my forms on a separate domain. For instance, I'm happy to have secure.Veda consulting for any kind of form interaction, and my main website, vedaconsulting.uk, can stay separate, and I'll just link off for the forms, right? So if our client said that, then we wouldn't need to worry about which CMS, and probably we would pick Drupal at that point, because in the Lego landscape, we know how to use that Lego. We know what to do to build CiviCRM around that Lego. So for us, it's easy, and what you're paying us for is CiviCRM services, right? So in that situation, I would probably just go with Drupal, because it gives us that flexibility. The CiviCRM community as a general is quite technical. A lot of Drupal sites makes it easy, right? So there are some easy decisions, and that's one of them. So I'm going to rewind right back to the beginning now. So if we start this presentation and say what's better, WordPress or Drupal for my CiviCRM, that question to me is just the wrong question. If you're asking that question, somewhere in the decision making, you've got so confused that you ended up trying to compare CMSs to work out what to use. The CMS and everything is only going to work if your strategic decisions are the right ones. So your outcomes from those processes end up with a CMS that fits your decision making process. If you just pick it based on technical features, you haven't taken into account everything that goes behind it, and you're probably making the decision based on the wrong inputs. Doesn't mean it's a wrong decision. After all, there's only two. It's 50-50. The chances are you're probably going to hit the right one, but by accident. And as we've seen, everyone's got different views. There's a lot of stuff bandied about security, enterprise, blogging. It's like all kinds of stuff, but it's all kind of noise. So what you have to do first is what matters to you. And I thought what would be interesting is if we were gonna, if we were looking for a CMS to put onto CiviCRM, how would we do it? And how do we advise some of our customers to do it? So I would put it down to Drupal and WordPress because they seem to have the most traction in the community, and they are the most prominent CMSs out there. So I'm not just going off of what Civi is saying and the Civi community is saying. I'm going off the wider CMS environments and landscape. So my number one question would be, what is my budget? Yeah, because that is probably the single most deciding factor or driving factor that you can bring into this discussion. I think one of the sites said that WordPress is cheaper than Drupal. When we say cheaper, we're talking about the cost of ownership. including implementation, right? So if you compared them over 2 or 3 years, you will find that Drupal is going to be 2 or 3 or 10 times more expensive than WordPress. And it's simple. Why? It's really simple, because there is that layer of owning areas of the site. There's the technical barriers that mean you have to pay experts. You can't just do bits yourself easily. Like once you've trained and you know how to use Drupal, then it's fine. What we find a lot is in the not-for-profit sector, there's a lot of churn of staff, new people coming in, and sometimes that adds an additional cost to you as an organization, right? Because you've got to train those people. You've got to make sure everybody knows how to do things in your way. And like we said, Drupal is like Lego. So I might have built my Drupal totally different to how the person you're bringing in used to use their Drupal before. So there is that cost. I do need to onboard them into my way of working. So, you know, there is a much bigger cost. So if my budget means, you know, I go out to tender and I say I'm looking for a WordPress or a Drupal site and it's got to work with Civi, my budget might mean that Drupal is out of the question because I just can't go that far at this point in time. So why am I trying to work out technical features? I can't afford it. It's quite simple, right? Drupal is aimed at enterprise. If you look at a lot of the Drupal 8 and Drupal 7 conversations, there are a lot of Drupal 7 developers, consultancies that are really unsatisfied with the outcome of Drupal 8 because all of the improvements are fantastic, but they're trying to get it to enterprise level CMS, which is, again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But in effect, you've got all these Drupal consultancy shops, and they're having to reskill, they're having to retrain everyone to get to Drupal 8, to become Drupal 8 consultancies. So there's a cost there. That cost gets passed down. The less organizations that can afford it, the higher the cost gets. The specialists become more and more niche, and you end up with that kind of vicious circle of the costs getting more and more, not cheaper and cheaper, because you've made it harder and harder for that transition. And that's where the introduction of Backdrop comes from. You know, the idea is that you keep Drupal 7, you keep the architecture, but you fix the UI issues, and you try and take it in a slightly different direction so that all the skills and all the resources that you have in the Drupal community are not lost, right? But it doesn't change the underlying decision. If my budget doesn't stretch to a Drupal implementation, then why am I even thinking about it? It doesn't matter if it's just, you know, it could be a rocket ship. It doesn't matter. I can't afford it. So that's an easy one. I've heard WordPress is insecure. So we even heard that in the some of the searches we did. And it's time for my first true story. So when I started Veda, I went at a quick website. I didn't have time. Busy trying to build the company, trying to do project work. So I put together a WordPress site and had a client ring me up about two months into working with them, saying you might want to take a look at your website. You are selling Viagra online, and you're palming off to some pharmacy sites if you go to certain pages. And to be honest, I didn't have a clue what he was talking about when he told me. But once I investigated it a bit, I could see quite clearly that we'd been hacked. I didn't know which of the plugins it had come from. I didn't know what to do about it. So I took the site down and put a Drupal one in place. And for the 4 years after that, we refused to work with anybody who had a WordPress site because we also had that view that it was insecure. But, you know, things changed. The WordPress community matured, started to realize that they need to address the fact that the community, as strong as it is, doesn't have any barriers to stop rubbish getting into client sites. So it's the lower the technical barrier, the easier it is for me to create an absolute mess of a website and to end up getting to a place where I've managed to get myself compromised, right? So they've got a lot better, much better. There's tools like WordFence. There's a couple of others, even Cloudflare, and a few other things out there that can really protect you from any kind of intrusion attack, any kind of potential leak, compromise of a file. There's all sorts of protection on there now. That really means that you don't need to worry about that. You turn on WordFence, you turn on automatic updates, and you have something that is going to maintain itself for the majority of the time. Things will break because, anytime you upgrade anything, there's always a risk that something's going to break. But breaking's far less of a security issue than leaving it the way it is and letting it be insecure. So I don't think security is a good enough decision to discount WordPress. It's almost like the whole open source argument. When you go up against Dynamics or some of these massive companies, Salesforce, the one thing their consultants band about is open source is insecure, because everybody has access to the code and you have no control over it. Well, we know that's not true. We know that is fake news. We know that. Yet we allow that conversation to happen about WordPress. So we do have to we should check ourselves a bit, I guess is what I'm saying. Because we shouldn't really allow that. We know WordFence can be made secure. And if you don't make it secure, well, you can't blame WordPress for that. So the next thing that I would look at is, okay, whatever CMS I pick, I need to get the maximum from it. What I don't want to do is pick a CMS based on its technical features, but then not really be able to maximize those features, not be able to access them, not be able to do anything with those features. And really, for those of you that can read between the lines here, I'm talking about Drupal and the Lego-like nature of it. So, like we saw with the CiviCRM decision making, they already have Drupal expertise in house. So the switch to any other CMS presents the same problem that a new organization going to Drupal faces, i.e., I don't have the skill set in that sector to get in. And Drupal's skill set is an expensive skill set. It's not the cheapest to get hold of. There are in short supply Drupal developers, Drupal consultancies, because of its enterprise, because of it heading towards an enterprise world. It's become more and more expensive. Projects are more and more expensive. People have got their own flavors of Drupal now. There's all kinds of things going on. So there is that technical debt that the cost of onboarding that becomes so high that you think you're getting a better product, which you are, right? And if you're going to look at it in terms of all the features that you get, you're getting everything out of the box. But how much of that can I use, right? I can't use all of it from day one. Well, then what is my 5-year plan, and am I going to access it? Am I going to start to need to do some of that stuff within 5 years or not? And if you're not, then the world, the way the technology works in the world now, you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. Like you have no idea if WordPress is going to suddenly self-destruct or Drupal's going to self-destruct. Like we have no idea. So I wouldn't even go that far. I might go for 3 years and say, right, this is going to get me to my 3 years goals, and I'm going to be able to meet all of my targets, and I'm going to have enough. It would have paid for itself, and enough that I can afford to get us to the next stage, because there might be something else by then. What I'm trying to say there is, whatever you go for, you should be looking to access the functions within 3 years, really. Like, and if you can't, then to me, you've planned a bit. You've paid for things that you're never going to use. So I would bring that into it. The plugins can be a blessing and a curse. So, I'll show this a bit later. I'm not going to talk about it now. I think I've talked about enough about that. So let's go down. My users and technical stuff. So again, if I've got Drupal people, I've got technical people in my organization, then they can build me what I want, right? What I need to be aware of is when they leave, what happens, or if they choose not to do that anymore, or, what faith do I have in them? We pitched for a massive, not massive, but a big CiviCRM implementation, and we were introduced by the technical department, so we were working in conjunction with them. We didn't get we didn't get through to the last few, and we didn't get through to the last one. We got down to the last two. We didn't get through. We didn't win it because it turned out the organization had no faith in the technical department. So, having technical people doesn't necessarily mean that you want to rely on them. So again, you need to bear all this in mind, just like the CiviCRM guys did. If you've got WordPress people and you have faith in them, well, then the logical step is to use WordPress. If you have Drupal people and they've done a great job on your existing platforms, then why switch? I would leave it. If you've got a proprietary CMS and it's doing well and your technical teams are doing great, then they can probably write all the plugins to talk to Civi, with Civi being implemented in the Drupal environment. So again, why open up the CMS discussion? The CMS, it shouldn't be the CRM driving the CMS discussion. It shouldn't really be that way. There's something wrong with the organization if it is that way. So it's just the way I would approach it. And then we talked a bit about this before. What functions do I need to give to supporters? Plays a big part. It's good timing. So let's go through an example. What do I say when I talk about a higher technical entry point? I'm talking not higher technical entry point. I'm talking about a higher technical barrier, really. So I've set up a Drupal 7 site. I didn't go Drupal 8 and CiviCRM. It is official that CiviCRM, Drupal 8 supports CiviCRM. It's an official plugin, supported plugin, but I'm not quite ready for the Drupal 8 leap myself yet. So I've just gone with the Drupal 7 stuff for now. I know webform works. I know views work. I know everything that I need to works. So that's what I've got set up. I've not changed any of them. They are out of the box. So I'm trying to make it so that when I show stuff, it should mirror what you would see if you were to install it in your end. And I want to do as much as I can through the UI when I'm doing these demos. I don't want to be doing FTP and stuff like that. So I'm going to see how much this works. I haven't tried any of these, so this could be a bit interesting. So let's go back here. I'm just going to open up so here's my Drupal site. I've already logged in. So I'm going to go through to Civi and just see. I go through to my WordPress site. So here's my WordPress site. Just go into Civi. So once I'm in Civi, you should all, if you're not Civi users yet, this is your kind of landing dashboard. I've got the ability to configure it, add some reports into it, etc., etc. And often we customize these for customers so that they show different things. So here I am in Drupal, D7, Drupal 7, and here I am in WordPress, right? I'm set up a production environment. So it looks the same, right? There's very little difference. And in terms of your CiviCRM experience, you should get that. You should get the same experience in both setups. So we're not talking about CiviCRM, right? So this is why I'm trying to differentiate the discussion points. That you're not discussing what will Civi work better in. You're not really talking about that. You're talking about what features do I get if I install WordPress with Civi as opposed to Drupal with Civi, and they're features that are not in the core products, so they're additional things. Because I can expose a Civi contribution page in either Drupal or WordPress, and it will do exactly the same thing in both. So what I'm talking about is, well, I want to customize that layout. I want it to look different. So what options do I have in WordPress? What options do I have in Drupal? So let me just go back. What was I going to do for this? So what I'm going to do is add a new form. Am I? All right. I'm going to try to do that. So let's go there. So in WordPress, the best way to do that, like if I'm not doing a standard Civi form, is probably Caldera. And if I'm doing it in Drupal, it's probably Webform, because both of those tools give me the ability to change the layout of the forms, to add fields that may not come into Civi, to do all kinds of things. So let's try both of them and let's see how we get on. So I'm going to do it first let's do it in Drupal. So let's hide that menu, and I'm just restating that I have not done this for a while. So in Drupal it's content, and I'm going to add a new web form. So what am I calling my web form? Let's call it so I'm not going to, I'll leave it, I won't stick it in there. I won't stick it anywhere in the menu. So you can see how the Drupal creation process is for content. A web form is a bit of content in effect. So I'll save that, and once I've saved it, I'm getting some web form stuff. So what do I want to add in? I'm going to come straight to CiviCRM now. I know what I'm doing with CiviCRM, so I want this form to come back to, I want this data to hit the CRM. So I'm going to enable CiviCRM processing, and here now I will start to see what information I'm capturing. So I'm just going to save that. So I'm getting the first name, last name, and I'm allowing the system to do a dedupe and match an existing contact if one exists, right? So I've created a form, and I can do conditional logic on it. So again, one of the reasons to use these kind of form processes is I might want to say, well, if someone says their first name is, well, if their title is professor, I might want to find out if they're still university or something. So I can put some conditions into the form, and I can set up emails going out, etc., etc. So these kind of tools give me a lot more workflow style processing. So that's fine. Let's have a look at it. So this is what that form looks like. Pretty basic. And let's see. I'm just going to see what URL path. So I'm going to give it an alias. I'll just do that. So let's save that. Okay, so now I've got my form. I'm going to just open up an incognito window, so for something that I'm not logged in. I'm going to run that. So I've got my form. It's there. Don't look the greatest, but I have it. It wasn't too bad, right? Getting to that point for creating a form, adding it in there. Let's try the same thing in WordPress. So here's my WordPress demo. So I'll go Candera forms and forms. I'm going to go new form. So ignore all that stuff. And this is much better, right? So I've got some templates. I can see some examples. I will do the contact form, which is pretty much the same as what I gave it, and the form name. I'm going to do that. Let's create that form. So I can add more fields if I want. Let's dismiss that. I can move stuff around. So let's bring the last name over there. I'm going to bring the email up there. So I'm getting things that I didn't really see, right? So I can hit the minuses, get rid of those layers, keep my submit box there. A much more UI, a much more pleasant UI experience, right? And when I click into the fields, I can edit them, and I've got all the settings for them down there. So in that sense, it's an easy to use kind of system. So I'll save that. Processes, add the processor. So I need to say contact one. So here I'm saying, what do I want to create in CiviCRM? So again, I'm creating a contact. I could make them a subtype if I wanted to. I'm not. I'm just creating an individual. The dedupe rule. So if we find someone with the same name and email address, then we're gonna add them in. What fields? So it's already told me the first name, last name, and the prefix email address are coming in. It's great. So let's save that. Okay, so now I've got my form. Let's see, how do I get there? Let's see what that is. So it's going to look something like that. I can't remember how you get to the actual URL for that form. Sure, it's in here somewhere. Yep, be up here. Shortcodes I'll talk about in a minute, but shortcodes are pretty clever ways to inject bits of content in other content. Seeing where it is. Let's have a look. Maybe in here. I think what I have to do is put it into a page. So if I go to a new page, shows how much I know what I'm doing, doesn't it? So let's publish that. So that's the page address in theory. So I'm just going to open up the incognito. There you go. There's my form. So styling's a bit out, but I've moved it around. But you can see they've both got, slight nuances about how they work. In terms of, I do need to know a little bit about what I'm doing. Otherwise, it's not going to be easy. A single click is not going to result in the form. But what I get in the WordPress way of doing it is a much easier. Let's go back here. Save that. I get a much more user-friendly kind of form editor. So, like I say, I can move those first. So I saw there that the layout wasn't quite right, so I could move the first name over into here somewhere. Somehow, yeah, there you go. Move the prefix over as well, and then when I present it now, it will look a lot better, right? So you can kind of see there what we're talking about with the differences in experience. That's one example. Just going back to. So that's once you've got something installed. Now, where you get the technical barriers is when you try to install a new plugin, right? So again, I haven't done this on these setups yet, but let's try them out. So with WordPress, we normally recommend you use the CiviCRM Admin Utilities plugin by Christian. It kind of changes the way that Civi looks. It introduces the theme. It makes it all a bit nicer. And for Drupal, we do views, web form, and CiviCRM stuff. We already have that in our standard deployments, so I've already got all that. So I'm going to try and install the CiviCRM member role sync extension, which looks at your CiviCRM database, works out if you're a member, you have a membership record against you, and then gives you a role. So a lot of the membership orgs that we work with, they use that kind of functionality that if you're a member and you try and log into the site, then you get access to the members area, you get access to assets, you get access to forums, etc., etc. So it doesn't just have to be about memberships. You could do that with anything. So a subscription, a part of a group, etc., etc. There's a group role sync as well. So we're just trying to install them. So what does it take? If I wanted to enable a feature, so if I want to plug in the CiviCRM admin utilities, what does that look like? Let's do that first. So where they go to plugins. So again, in WordPress, I can see what plugins I've got. Caldera Forms, Civi Caldera integration, and then I've got CiviCRM itself. So I'm going to add a new one. And I'm going to look for CiviCRM. Let's just search now. Just try searching CiviCRM and see what comes back. I didn't plan this, honestly. It might look that way. But CiviCRM Admin Utilities is the first one. But I can see all the CiviCRM related plugins, nice and clean, looks good. I got access to the rating system. I can see how many installs there are. So it's starting to build confidence in what I'm seeing. I'm seeing there's over 1,000 installs. So there shouldn't really be anything to worry about here. To install it, let's try install now. Fingers crossed. It's installed. Let's activate it. Okay, so that's activated. So I'm just seeing what my dog's up to. But it's activated. Let's have a look at the settings. So I've got some settings. Do I want to say checklist apply the menu? Yeah. Checklist enable the theme. Default styles, just soft delete. These are all the possible things I can do. But and I'm going to clear the caches, so let's save that. Okay, so let's go back into Civi. Has it changed? Ooh, it's changed, right? So I've now got a Shoreditch-like view, and let's just see if there's anyone in my database. No. Oh, I didn't install demo data, so let's just go context, new individual. So you'll see more of the difference in colors and stuff when you actually get into CiviCRM itself. Right, so that was really straightforward. I can download a plugin, I can customize my Civi, I can start to harness the power of some of these plugins pretty easy, and the whole journey was pretty slick, right? So let's try the same thing in WordPress. So what are we doing again? Let's just go back there. So member role sync, right? Okay. I hope you can't sense the tension in my breath as I'm about to try and do this. Hello. Sorry, I'm just going to give him some food. There you go. Help yourself out. Okay, where were we going to put that plugin? So in the Drupal world, they're called modules. So let's go. I've got some updates and stuff. Fine. Let's. I'm trying not to be negative, but you can kind of see the difference in experience. I'm a technical person, so I absolutely do not mind this kind of layout. But you know, let's see how we get on. So here's my first technical hurdle. What is it talking about? Right. So I don't know what this is talking about. So what can I do? Okay, I can go to modules and themes on Drupal.org and find them. All right, let's do that then. Thanks for your help. Search for modules. Let's just use the word CiviCRM. Let's see what we end up with. Theme key, migrate, web form. I've got all that. CiviCRM.Tea. All this stuff. I'm going to pick anyone, actually. It doesn't really matter which one I'm doing. Let's just do events calendar. That looks like this could be interesting. So I've got that now. Now, obviously, I'm quite technical. So if I go back to instructions, it says install from URL install. If I could say install properly. Or upload the tar.gz. So I'm going to do the tar.gz. So I download it. I've got it now on my downloads. I come here, I choose, I pick it, and I install it. And let's see what that does. I don't know what this is doing. I don't want to go FTP manager. What are you trying to do? Okay, so let's try from the URL then. That didn't work, right? So let's do. So let's try that. Events calendar. So I've hit an issue now. I just installed. Well, one of our guys just installed Drupal, pretty much how we install it every time, and it obviously is not quite playing nicely. So now what I would do is FTP into the server, copy the files over, unzip the directory structure, and then enable the module. So then I would come in here and enable the module. So like we've got CiviCRM.Tea, I would come into this section and I would see what the options are for it, and then I would, so for instance, come into here, and then I would get all the options for that module, and then I could turn it on or off and do whatever I needed to do to it. So you can see that it's a totally different user experience. There's very little feedback. I don't get access to much of the ecosystem. I don't actually know who does what. Like I'm just not exposed in the same way that I am when I do when I do the Drupal plugin, the WordPress plugin. So again, let's just reiterate the difference there. So go to add new. I'm not pushed off to WordPress site at this point, right? So it's not saying go away and find whatever you want to find. So I'm going to do it from here. Let's look for more CiviCRM goodies, and some really nice things. How many installs, what the ratings are, etc., etc. I could install the contact form. I'm not going to install another one, but you kind of get the drift, right? They are very different. The installs will work. These both were installed out of the box with very little customization done to any of them. And we've been doing Drupal installs for decades, right? So I'm hoping that kind of shows you what I mean by technical barriers. When you're into the products and using them, that's when you really start to see how difficult they are to work with. And difficult doesn't mean bad. Difficult just means expensive or costly, whichever way. Because if you're an enterprise organization, that cost is you've built it into your way of working. You're going to train people. All of your systems are going to be complicated. CiviCRM itself is not the simplest system on earth to use, so you do have to factor it in. But how far do you want to go with it? These are the sort of questions that you need to answer. So I'm going to start winding up now. I don't think there's any questions, so I'll start winding up. And I think if you've reached this point and you still don't know, then start praying to the CMS gods is what I've put in here. Well, the reason I'm putting that in there is because you're still not thinking about the right things, right? So if you get to this point and you still can't decide, then which of the questions is it that you're struggling with? Is it the budget question? Is it the technical, the functional, what does your business need to do? Is it that question? Is it the technical barriers? Which one of these things are you finding difficult to answer? I would go back to that one, and I might focus on that for a bit. Even if you went with Drupal or WordPress, it's only a 50-50. The worst case scenario, you'll have to change at some point. But it's not going to stop your usage of CiviCRM. It's not going to stop you starting to build your single point of truth. So I wouldn't lose sleep over it too much. If what you're trying to do is implement CiviCRM, then you can do that without worrying about getting the CMS decision wrong necessarily. It's a long, hard journey, so you need to start somewhere. And I say that if you've got this far and you still don't know, and you have the budget for Drupal or you have access to Drupal resource, then probably that's what I would do, because you have the budget and the capital to protect yourself in the way that if you did need to suddenly have these 100 features, you're not going to compromise the business and have to start again with your CMS project. If you don't, you've got enough budget to get Drupal, but not really enough to get the maximum, then my advice would be go with WordPress and get the maximum from it. So maybe not using your entire budget, but get the best out of WordPress. Get resource to help you throughout the life cycle, throughout the 3-year plan, rather than spending it all on an implementation and having none left over to help you. That partnership with whoever puts in your CMS or your CRM, that's more important than anything, right? Because if you have an implementation and you can't afford to maintain the partnership, you're not going to get the maximum out of whatever you put in. And we hear it with Civi, and we hear it with CRMs time and time again that organizations are trying to do it on shoestring budgets, and they as a result of that, they have a real negative experience of whatever tool they're on. So it's just bear that in mind. Just because you have the budget to go Drupal, it doesn't mean that's the right decision. Cool. So that's everything from me. I hope that kind of gives you a different perspective on the eternal WordPress Drupal discussion. We do have other presentations lined up and on ideas.CiviCRM.TV if you wanted to suggest anything else. And if there's any kind of feedback on this or any questions, please do reach out to us, and we'll try try and answer them for you. Like I said, we're CMS agnostic ourselves. We don't supply services around them, so we don't supply implementation services around them. We do maintain them for some clients, etc. So we can hopefully give you an impartial kind of view on stuff. Thanks for watching, and please do tune in next week. I think we're going to do Civi rules, but that might change. Thanks.